All right, welcome everyone. Hi, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the MongoDB event in concert with PowerToFly. Good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you for coming to today's virtual event hosted by PowerToFly and MongoDB. We are super excited to have you all here. My name is Meg Alexander. If you've attended any other PowerToFly events, you might recognize me from the virtual hosting team where I host chat and learns and some office hours, icebreaker events, and a bunch of stuff from the virtual career fair and mini summits with y'all. PowerToFly is a female-run company with a mission to fast-track gender equality by upskilling and connecting women to roles in highly visible sectors. In these extraordinary and very uncertain times, PowerToFly is proud to be able to present daily virtual events like this one so that we all can have an opportunity to learn together and digitally meet the rest of our community. Over the past 3 years, PowerToFly has hosted over 300 virtual and in-person events in partnership with both global enterprises and this summer, we also hosted our inaugural virtual summits, which are multi-day events that feature over 50 women leaders. Hold on here, sorry guys. That feature over 50 women leaders. I'm sorry guys, I lost my spot. We discussed diversity, inclusion, remote work, tech trends, as well as anti-racism education. It was so fun. If you missed it, I highly suggest you sign up for our upcoming mini fair. The recordings of all those conversations can be found on the PowerToFly website, and we'll drop the link to that in the chat here in just a little bit. And you can also follow us on social media. We are at PowerToFly on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube, where you can check out some of our past videos for like those chat and learns and office hour sessions that I was talking about earlier. So whether you come to our online or in-person events, when you are here with us, we strive to foster honest and open conversations about topics that really resonate with skilled professional women and allies. Today's discussion with several of the incredibly impressive women from MongoDB will be no different. MongoDB is the leading modern general purpose data platform that's unleashing the power of software and data for developers and the applications that they build. I really can't wait to hear more about this market leading company. And so with that said, let's get started. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today. They will introduce themselves shortly, and then we will dive deeper into their thoughts and experiences. I'm going to ask some questions to get the conversation going, and then we will dedicate a decent portion of today's conversation to answering your questions before ending with an intimate breakout session. Before I kick off with the formal agenda though, I'll quickly go through some helpful hints to make sure that you all have the best possible virtual experience today with PowerToFly and MongoDB. While it's likely that many of you are very familiar with a lot of this stuff since working from home has become the new norm and working virtually, I still am going to take a minute to go over these points. In case you do become disconnected from the online presentation or if you have a bad connection, no worries. You can always call in from a landline or from your mobile phone. If you do get disconnected and want to try to reconnect on your computer, just feel free to come back in and jump back into the Zoom room. You will find the dial-in number for your for this call on your audio panel. You can look that up on your laptop now, or you can pull it up on the Zoom mobile app. We kindly ask that you please stay on mute during the presentations. It looks like as you entered the room, you should have been put on mute already. We will have a section for Q&A, and we will make it clear when you guys can come off mute. Most of what we do that for is to make sure that the audio clarity is good for everybody on the call, and so everybody can hear everybody and you don't miss a single thing that's said by any of these wonderful people. If you do have a question, you again are totally free to participate, and we always encourage participation. You can do so by putting your question, typing it into the Zoom panel, the Zoom group chat pop out. Lucia, who is one of my coworkers, is from the PowerToFly team. She is going to be hanging out in that Zoom chat as well in case you have a more pressing question. If you do want your question raised anonymously, not a problem. I would suggest that you send it to Lucia specifically instead of sending it to everyone in the group chat. And you can find her name on the drop-down menu in the group chat box. You can also visit PowerToFly to see MongoDB's PowerToFly page. We're going to share that in the chat here in just a second. You can also see a lot of our daily virtual events that we have there. We have some on career coaching, upskilling sessions, interview prep, community events, and much more. This event is being recorded, and you will receive the recording in the next few days. We find that this helps out so that people don't have to worry about taking notes, or if they miss something, asking somebody to repeat themselves. So no worries, you will be able to view this recording again later. And last but not least, we love feedback. And so to that end, we're going to be sharing a 2-minute survey towards the end of today's event. Promise, it literally only takes 2 minutes, and we read every single one of these, and it is incredibly helpful and important because we do make large changes to this format depending on what works best for y'all. So please, please, please take this 2-minute survey. We send it out. We'll also mail it out to you email it out to you once the event concludes. We really hope to hear from you guys. We really do value the feedback. So please take 2 minutes max out of your day to complete that for us. As we get into today's agenda, this is a real quick look at it. We are going to be starting with a welcome address from MongoDB's Vice President of Sales Ops, Meghan Gill. And then we will hear 10 valuable lessons for creating a successful sales career from MongoDB's Regional Director of Sales, Stephanie Samuels, before moving into today's panel discussion featuring several of the company's leaders. Then we're going to wrap up this portion of the virtual event with some quick closing remarks, including learning how to apply to open roles at MongoDB, before jumping into our breakout sessions where you can ask your questions to the MongoDB team directly. And remember, this is a safe space. So if you have questions for the PowerToFly team, please just add them into the chat box. We'll do our best to help you, like if you have kind of troubleshooting or anything else. If you have questions for the MongoDB team, you can either save them for the audience Q&A at the end of the session before the breakout sessions, or if you have something more specific that would better be answered in the breakout sessions, then please feel free to save it for then. I know that the people from the MongoDB team that will be joining us in those breakout rooms would absolutely love the chance to answer some of your questions and get that real face-to-face interaction with you guys. So with that being said, let's meet the rest of the panel for today. Julia, would you like to kick off introductions?
Of course. Thank you so much, Meg, and great lineup here for today. I'm really excited to be here. To introduce myself, I'm the Global Director for Customer Success here in MongoDB. I've been with the company for almost 3 years, coming up in January. And yeah, I've been leading the customer success team that's globally distributed between New York, Austin, Dublin, Berlin, India, and Gurgaon, India, as well as Sydney. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. And yeah, look forward to talking to you all a little bit about your careers. What questions are top of mind for you? And I've been in customer success and SaaS for about 10 years now. So I'm very passionate about developing teams, growing teams, and yeah, growing leaders over time. That's what I really enjoy, and what I do day to day and week over week. For a quick fun fact, I think that's one of the things we're asked to share is I consider it a fun fact. I get to participate in 2 elections as I'm a dual citizen, both of Germany and the US now. So this year was a special 1 year in the US for many reasons. I got to participate for the first time in the general one as a recent US citizen. But yeah, that's my fun fact, that I get to participate twice around the world.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. And that's really amazing that you are, not only just a dual citizen, but so eager to participate in, the election process.
Very important. Yes.
Yeah, very important. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are realizing that now, but hopefully this sticks around for many years to come. All right, so welcome, Julia. Thank you so much for that. Let's move on to Nati. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Nati Yemane. I'm a solutions architect on the pre-sales technical team based out of New York City. I've been at MongoDB for about 6.5 months now. Before, I was a sales engineer still within the pre-sales role at AppDynamics. And I've been in pre-sales for about 4.5 years. And before I was in pre-sales, I was in back office technology at Citigroup. So definitely, a change of pace. I'm local to the New York City region, but I'm actually raised in Dallas, Texas. So quite a change of pace within the last several years for sure. A little bit fun fact about me. So I usually go to Germany twice a year. I always make it a point to visit there because I have family that lives there. But it's interesting because this year, obviously things are a lot different with the work from home and, stay at home orders, but definitely missing visiting Germany for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Nati. Next, we are going to speak with Vanda.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and having me here today. I am Vanda. I am part of the sales development representative team in Dublin. And on the topic of multiculturalness in the panel today, it is amazing. I am actually half German, half Thai myself, and decided to move to Dublin a couple of years ago, and now am at MongoDB. I've been at MongoDB for a year now, and I'm very happy to be part of the sales development team because, the representation of women in sales is growing, and it's really, really amazing to be part of that growth at MongoDB. And yeah, very, very delighted to be here, everyone. And feel free to ask me any questions in the chat and, of course, later on in the breakout sessions.
Thank you so much for being here, Vanda. Vanda or Vanda, I'm sorry.
Vanda.
Vanda, thank you. All right, so next up we have Stephanie.
Hi, I am Stephanie Samuels. I am the Regional Director of Sales for Mongo. I have been with Mongo for almost 2 years. I head up a sales team in Illinois and Wisconsin. And prior to coming to Mongo, I worked for another tech company for almost 13 years, 5 of which I headed up 2 different sales teams on the East Coast. So I'm excited to talk to you. I'll be talking to you about some of the things that I have learned in my 20 plus years of selling. Fun fact for me, in addition to being a mom, I have a dog, and I am praying, fingers crossed, that he does not bark and interrupt my my discussion on the 10 things I've learned in my career. So hopefully we'll have some good luck and he will behave.
No worries if you do. I have 2 bulldogs that are currently snoring under my desk, which is why I keep going on and off mute. So we're, especially at PowerToFly, we are well used to some of our furry coworkers being less than ideal office mates. So no worries there.
Joys from work from home.
I've been doing it for 2 years and I honestly wouldn't trade it for the world. It's pretty great. Oh, Kate says that if quarantine rules dictate that if your dog barks, we get to see it. So absolutely. All right, so thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm also now really excited to introduce today's keynote speaker, Meghan Gill, who is the Vice President of Sales Ops at MongoDB. Meghan, would you like to give us a brief introduction before we lead into your talk?
Sure. Well, I think I can just jump right in and give a little bit of background about myself. I'm not going to take up too much time, but my name is Meghan. I run sales operations and more recently the sales development organization. So sales ops is all of the analytics, planning, systems and tools to support our sales organization. And the sales development organization is the team of folks that do outbound prospecting to our prospective clients, as well as following up on inbound interest. So I've been at the company, believe it or not, for 11 years. And I have a really, I think, a fun journey I can share with you to kick things off. So when I joined MongoDB 11 years ago, we were less than 10 employees. So I was the 8th employee and everybody else was an engineer. And so you may be asking, how did I get that job? Well, that's sort of my first bit of advice. So I was at a job I didn't really think had a lot of upside. So I started networking, and one of the people I networked with was somebody I met in college. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and I asked him for career advice. How do I get into the startup ecosystem? I'm really interested in doing something more entrepreneurial. And he said, you're really great, you're smart, you should come join MongoDB. And that's what I did. So that's sort of my first sort of bit of advice. When I walked into the job, I learned pretty quickly that I was going to have to figure things out on my own. because as you can imagine, again, it was a team of all engineers. The CEO at the time was also an engineer. So nobody was really telling me what to do. So my second piece of advice is not to wait for instructions, because oftentimes people aren't going to give you the instructions that you need. And I found one of the ways that I've been able to continue to progress my career is to network and talk to people around the company, outside of the company, and ask them how they're approaching different problems. And a lot of times that's how you're going to find the solutions, or even start thinking about addressing problems before you even know they are problems. So over the first, I would say, 7 years that I was at MongoDB, I had a bunch of different roles in the marketing org. So I got to grow out demand generation, field marketing, developer relations. I had like a really good run in marketing, and I really felt like I had learned a lot. And I was asking myself, well, what's the next step? You know, logically, I thought my next step would be to go run marketing at maybe a smaller, earlier stage company, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to be in marketing my whole career. So sort of going through this internal debate, and at that time, the CEO and the CRO at the time said, well, we have this opportunity to lead sales operations. And I really debated it, because so to give you the context, like I had never seen a sales compensation plan before. I'd never run a productivity analysis. I really had no idea. I'd like not had any exposure to sales operations. And it was a small team, and at the time they were having some challenges sort of collaborating, coordinating with other parts of the company. But I decided to do it because I figured, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Right? It'd be a learning opportunity. I could, if I wanted to go back into marketing, I could always say, hey, I've seen things from the sales point of view and come back to marketing, or I could expand my career and learn add a new skill set. So my third sort of piece of advice for this short welcome remarks is, you know, sometimes you have to take a step to the side to continue to go up, and to think of your career less as that sort of progressive ladder from step 1 to 2 to 3, but more like a jungle gym, which is an analogy. If you've read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, she talks about thinking about your career as a jungle gym. And that really resonated for me. So when I moved over into sales ops, you know, it was a lateral move. It was the same title. It was actually a smaller team. So, you know, it wasn't like I was taking this big leap forward immediately, but I've had the chance to grow out that team from, you know, 3 or 4 people to over 30, which has been a lot of fun. And then more recently, I had the opportunity to add the sales development organization under my umbrella, which I'm learning a lot from and really enjoying. Hi, Vanda. So that's a little bit about my my career. I'll share a few little personal tidbits. So I met my husband at work, believe it or not. We went to the same university, never met there. Came to MongoDB and met, got married. He now started a company, so he's no longer at MongoDB, but we talk shop a lot. We have 2 kids. So there's my daughter is going to be 3 in January, and my son is going to be 1 in a few weeks, which is pretty exciting. They're both redheads, which was a really fun surprise. It was fun when the first one came out as a redhead. It was even funnier when the second one did. But anyway, so I have 2 redheads under 3. So it's definitely been an interesting journey during COVID to have 2 really little kids at home. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about MongoDB and about my coworkers is how flexible everybody's been, whether it's been blocking out hours during the day for childcare, because I have to juggle between me and my husband and my mother and my mother-in-law, or having my baby in my lap during a conference call. Everyone's pretty understanding about that. You know, we talked about dogs snoring. So when my son was born, I used to, like, he wouldn't nap on his own in sort of the early days of quarantine. So I used to wear him in the ergo carrier and sway, and he would sleep, and like he snored very, very loudly, and people were like, what is that noise? It was my son. So anyway, so I think that flexibility has been really important. So to wrap things up before Stephanie gives what I think is going to be an amazing talk, I'll sort of summarize the few pieces of advice and then leave you with one other, like probably the most important piece of career advice. So I sort of alluded to three things. Make sure you're proactively networking. Don't wait for instructions. So take accountability, own your career, and figuring out what the next steps are. Sometimes you need to go sideways to go up. So don't be afraid of making a lateral move or expanding your experience. You'll be better for it in the longer term. And the last piece of advice is to focus so much more on being at a great company than what your title is or what your role might be. So speaking from experience, like it's the reason I've been at MongoDB for 11 years now, is that this is an amazing company. It's growing quickly. The company shares my values. They take care of their employees. Those are things that are so much more important. And if a company is growing and they really value their employees, then there will always be opportunities for you. So for me, it was, moving from marketing into sales ops into SDR. I mean, I see like Danielle, who helped us organize this event. She was on the marketing team with me back in the day. And now she's running diversity and inclusion, which was a position that didn't even exist a few years ago. So, I mean, that to me is the most, exciting thing, is that those opportunities that are yet to be created, if you're at a great company, you're going to be sort of the first in line for those opportunities. So those are my welcoming remarks, and I'm excited to be here and answer any other questions that people might have.
Thank you so much, Meghan. That was a great introduction to MongoDB and their culture. And to get us an even deeper look into the sales team, let's move on to Stephanie's sales talk. She'll be speaking on From Start to Success, 10 Lessons to Shape an Impactful Career in Sales. Again, for anybody that didn't hear it earlier, Stephanie Samuels is the Regional Director of Sales at MongoDB.
First of all, I'd like to say, Meghan, you have understated how awesome you truly are and the impact that you've had at Mongo. To be at Mongo for that long and to be one of the women at Mongo for that long is incredible. And the second piece, Meghan, is, Meghan and I did not talk before I, talk about the contents of my presentation. And Meghan, you covered a piece that is really critical in what I'm going to talk about, and that is really focusing on the organization that you are working with. So that was actually an excellent segue, Meghan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. I hope I didn't steal your thunder.
No, you just added to it. Thanks. So, I've been selling technology for 20 plus years. So what I want to share with you is some of the lessons that I've learned. And these lessons are applicable to both technology sales and non-technology sales. But I think they are particularly beneficial to women in sales and women in sales leadership. So I'm going to attempt to kind of distill 23 years of experience into 15, 20 minutes max. I'm going to do it David Letterman style, the top 10 David Letterman list. So without further ado, okay, number 10 on my 10 lessons is you are more than a label. So, I mentioned I've been in sales for a while. I started in tech sales in the late 90s, worked for an awesome CAD CAM company. And in my first role, my job would entail calling into engineering and manufacturing companies in central and southern Illinois. And if you're not familiar with that area of the country, we are talking small towns. So I would cold call to get the appointments. And the only thing that the other person on the line would know about me was that A, I was a woman in technology, selling CAD CAM software. That's kind of odd. And two, they probably had subconsciously sized me up as a white woman, because at the time, my last name was McEwen. So I wish I could kind of effectively describe to you the look on people's faces when I went into Quincy, Illinois, and Effingham, Illinois, and I showed up for the appointment. So in essence, they were expecting, Susie Cutie Patootie, and then in walks Oprah. And so I can't tell you how many times during that period, I watched people figuratively pick their jaws up off the floor because they were surprised by me. There was nothing about me that fit into their box or fit into their label of being a woman or fit into their label of being a Black person. Since then, there's also been, countless times where I've walked into a conference room or presented to a group of executives, and I look around and I realize that I'm the only Black person, or like I'm the only woman or one of few women. And if you think about it, in these scenarios, it could be almost incapacitating, except I really defined the label for myself. So I choose to use these labels to benefit me. In sales, the hardest thing to do is differentiate yourself, right? My perspective is that when I walk through someone's door, I know I'm going to be remembered because I am super unique. I'm a Black woman who sells technology. So changing your perspective on your label as, like, let's say woman, allows you to take control and to really harness what some people might perceive as a disadvantage to your advantage. And that's why recognizing that you are more than a label, it made it to my top 10 list. And that brings me to like lesson number 9 on my list, which is work ethic. So, I grew up in the 70s, late 70s, I'll add. And so when I was growing up, my parents used to say to me, you've got to be twice as good to be equal. And then the other thing is, like, if I brought home like a C, for example, on a test, my parents would be really, really angry about it. And they would say that you're not performing to your potential. And the other thing they would say, and this is the profound statement here, they would say, you cannot afford to be average. So my parents were preparing me. They were planting the seeds in me to establish a strong work ethic, because they already knew that as a female, my best shot at success in school and later in the workforce would be tightly coupled to my work ethic. And so, like, to this day, I attribute much of my success to working harder and most importantly, like, smarter than the next person. And in your careers as women, rightly or wrongly, you're going to need to have an exceptional work ethic to have a seat at the table. And but this is an important piece, and it's kind of nuanced. While your work ethic is super important, it cannot be at all costs. And so I'm going to address that nuance when I hit work-life balance. But work ethic really is not enough, and that brings me to my 8th lesson on the list, and that is self-advocacy. So as you are achieving your successes, and think of what Meghan just told us of how she rose through the ranks in her career at Mongo. Like, as you're doing all these great things, you cannot and you must not stop there. It is so important for us as women to take it a step further and advocate for ourselves. But here's the rub. Studies show that women, compared to men, we are less likely to kind of put our hats in the ring for jobs that we feel unqualified for. Studies also show that we are, more likely than our male counterparts to advocate for the advancement of people who are around us or the people who report to us than we are ourselves. So we really need to be focused on being vocal about our own success, to take credit for the ideas that are ours, to ask for promotions, to as Meghan talked, to go and try something completely new and take a lateral so you can rise up through the ranks. One of the things that is important for us as women is to recognize that, our contributions in business matter, and our ideas and our efforts are every bit as valid and valuable as our male counterparts. So do not hesitate to advocate for yourself. And I understand that, talking about self-advocacy is a little bit easier said than done, because there's those times when you have that small voice that's in your ear when no one else is listening. It's kind of that voice of self-doubt. That voice is what brings me to number 7 on my list. And that is, you are not an imposter. How many times have you been in meetings or attended a conference and said to yourself, I don't belong here? Or worse yet, how many times have you hesitated to apply for an open position or to ask for a promotion because you're a bit apprehensive. You're afraid of being told no, or being told you weren't qualified, afraid to take that leap of faith to take a lateral, or kind of felt like an imposter. There is an official name for this, and it's imposter syndrome. So Harvard Business Review kind of defines imposter syndrome as a collection of feelings or inadequacies that persist despite evidence success. So, here's a lesson on not feeling like an imposter. And it's really closely aligned to some of what I've said before. If you have not allowed yourself to be defined by a label, and when you have a strong work ethic and know your craft, then by definition, you are not an imposter. So just as my previous guidance had been to advocate for your accomplishments to others within your organization, you also have to remind yourself of these same accomplishments. Surround yourself with allies who can act to validate your worth and your contributions. You have every right to be present and heard and respected and promoted and celebrated because you have earned it. And the reality is, time is too short to spend more than a moment dwelling in the realm of self-doubt and the realm of imposter syndrome. And in fact, the fact that time is too short is what brings me to lesson number 6. And lesson number 6 is the most valuable resource that you have is your time. If you think about it, time is much more valuable than money. You could always make more money. You cannot make more time. You've got 86,400 seconds in a day, and our days are numbered. And this becomes particularly important for you, as Meghan was talking about with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, as you, like if you're a working mom or you have motherhood anywhere in your future, you're going to find that your time is even more so at a premium. And as such, a key piece of career advice I can give you is to only work for those organizations and those people who value your time. Only give your time to organizations that are going to push you to be your best, that are known for developing talent, and that truly believe that the strength of the organization is truly in the strength of the people, including and especially the strength of their women. And there's a study that was published in the Harvard Business Review that found that women ranked higher in 12 out of the 16 core leadership competencies, including collaboration, driving results, and self-development. They also showed a higher propensity for resiliency and out-of-the-box thinking. And then the United Nations Council on Women reports, quote, companies benefit from increasing employment and leadership opportunities for women, which is shown to increase organizational effectiveness and growth, end quote. The evidence is clear. Having women in business is good business. So only invest your time in those organizations who fundamentally believe it. Be thinking quid pro quo. I will give my valuable time in exchange for development, in exchange for leadership and mentoring opportunities, in exchange for an opportunity to create wealth. Give your time to organizations that support working women. And if you couldn't tell from the fact that I'm a working mom and from what Meghan told about with her 2 kids, MongoDB is one of those types of organizations. That's why I'm here at Mongo. Pleased to report, Mongo is hiring. We are looking to hire and retain and mentor and develop the next generation of great women leaders. The 5th lesson on my list, and I know that, with Meghan talking about her 2 kids and myself, she can appreciate that, and that's work-life balance. Work-life balance is closely related to previous lessons around, work ethic and things like that. Work-life balance is fluid and it's tricky. And I cannot profess that I've got it 100% figured out 100% of the time, but here we go. So when I had my daughter in 2005, I felt a lot of pressure from all sides, including from myself, around work-life balance. And I questioned whether I was taking too much or taking too little maternity leave. I had all the, I had to contend with all the well-meaning people in my life questioning, should I have had my child in daycare that early? How can I feel comfortable leaving my newborn baby to a stranger? It was just a lot. And honestly, for me, that was just the beginning of this kind of work-life balance dance that I've been on. Here's a couple things I've learned around this. Number one is you're never truly 100% in balance. At some point, your career gets more time depending on the job you have, or the time of the quarter or the fiscal year. And at some point, your family gets more time. And all of that is okay. The key is to never get to the point where one of the two is so far out of whack that is impacting the other for a prolonged period of time. So for me, that means I've had to constantly assess and reassess. Am I spending my valuable time on those areas in my life that need me the most at that moment? And then also, am I spending my valuable time in those areas that will give me the greatest long-term payback? So it's important to do this kind of reassessment, because what you don't want is to look back and have regret. Regret is a totally non-productive emotion. The second lesson I've learned around work-life balance is that, as you progress in your career and as your personal life evolves, your perspective on work-life balance will shift. In my instance, there was a 4 or 5 year period where I was traveling for work for a good portion of the week. I had a nanny, I had, my husband and I had collectively made an assessment that the benefits of work were not coming at too large of a cost for my family. Then kind of fast forward a little bit of time, and I found myself kind of looking at the not too distant future at the fact that my daughter would be entering in high school. And it became much more important for me to have like my eyes on child and to devote more time to her development than traveling for work. Like I could see that the demands of my travel schedule were soon going to like catapult me and my entire family into a situation where we would have been way out of whack. My perspective changed. And as a result, I had to make some fundamental changes. In fact, that's how I got to be at Mongo, which kind of echoes one of my previous lessons here about you want to devote your time to organizations that support working moms, that support working dads, that understand that you have responsibilities outside of just work. So lesson 4 on my list is create a personal board of directors. Now, creating a personal board of directors means purposefully surrounding yourself with people who have a genuine interest in your success. Really think of your career as a corporation, and you need key people around you who have done this before and who have knowledge that they're willing to share with you. You'll want on your board, career mentor types, people who could give you business guidance and kind of help you with that work-life balance and help you decide on career moves. You'll want financial advisors on your personal board of directors. People who can coach you around building wealth, not just making money. You'll want like a religious or spiritual type of advisor who will help you maintain your North Star as you are developing. So along this line, I have an important piece of advice to share around that mentor role in your board of directors. You may have a tendency to seek women mentors or value the advice of female mentors over male mentors. And believe it or not, I'm going to caution you against this train of thought. True, women may be more adept at understanding the particular challenges we face in business, like without question, that is true. But consider this. Oftentimes, men are already in the room where it happens. They're in the room where we want to be. And there are many men who see the value that women contribute and want to be part of the process of elevating women. So I personally had extraordinary male mentors who've invested in me beyond measure. So I just caution you that don't assume that a man can't or won't be an exceptionally strong advocate for you. You really want to do your best to keep your mentor pool as broad and as open as possible. So we're getting towards the end here. The third lesson on my list is to run your own race. Now, I recognize that my path to success is different from anybody else's, certainly different from anyone that I work with, right? I'm running my own race and I'm on my own course. That means I try my best not to get too wrapped around the axle about what people typically do, what is standard. And I really started to learn this lesson, kind of, believe it or not, in my late high school, early college years. So the typical standard college race, if you will, or path, if you will, is that you graduate high school, you enter into college, you do college for 4 years, and then you graduate. That was the race that I expected to run. But as it turns out, that was not my race at all. You know, I started at Boston University, and 2 semesters into college, my father, unbeknownst to me, stopped making payments towards my college. And as a result, I was administratively removed from BU due to non-payment. You know, side note, sadly, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer around the same time, but I didn't know about his illness at the time. And so my older brother and I, you know, my older brother was also living in Boston. He had this saying that you've got to be smarter than the problem. So we figured out the solution. And that was I had to establish myself as an independent in the state of Massachusetts. Neither parent could claim me on their taxes. So once I established myself as an independent, then I was able to apply for my own loans and apply for different types of scholarship. At what point I applied to Harvard University and was accepted. I worked full time during the day, and I went to school full time at night. And it took me a full 5.5 years to graduate. So if I was running the standard college race, I should have graduated in 4. So by that definition, I didn't do so good on that race. But as it turns out, I wasn't on the standard race. I had my own race and I did really well. I graduated cum laude from Harvard, and I cherish that degree more than most because it was so hard fought. So the moral of this work and life lesson is that you have to recognize you're on your own race. This story kind of exemplifies lesson number 2 on my list, and that's perseverance. You know, as I look back at that time and many other times in my life, but that time in particular, and I wonder how I got through it, the answer is perseverance. I wish I could tell you that I was like strong and positive and fearless the whole time, but I would totally be lying. There were more than a few times where I felt defeated and just wanted to give up. And it was like my mom's constant encouragement, coupled with that inner voice that I called perseverance, that told me to keep moving and keep moving forward and do not stop. So some of you right now are probably going through significant challenges in your own personal life or careers. You know, we're all working with work-life balance, you know, working with COVID and you know, work from home. And 2020 just hasn't been great in general. These challenges can feel insurmountable, but in some of these times when it gets bad, I just want to encourage you to keep moving forward and to remember to persevere. And alas, that brings me to lesson number 1 on my list. And that is, it's actually a phrase, and that is, there will be beauty for ashes. So in both my personal life and in my career, the best growth that I've seen has come from circumstances where it felt like my life was like burning down and turning to ash. You know, one such example I just spoke about, you know, getting kicked out of BU for financial reasons, you know, quickly followed by learning that my father had a terminal illness. That was a really bad time. So you may be wondering, how did this rough patch in my college life make it to number 1 list in my career lessons list? And here's why. I mentioned I was going to school full time and I was working full time. So my brother's girlfriend worked at a cool tech startup company. And through her, I got a job as a receptionist. I wasn't working the phones very long before I was promoted into their production department. And I got exposure to all different areas of business. And I got to meet and hang out with technology salespeople who, at the time, neither they nor I realized the imprint in my mind that they were making. You know, then I went to work for another cool tech startup company who, fun fact, their supercomputer was featured in Jurassic Park. Then I went to work for another cool tech company. And this all occurred before I even graduated from college. So because of my father's illness and getting booted from school, I got exposed to careers in technology and specifically technology sales. Had none of these traumatic events had happened to me, I am 100% confident that I would not be here speaking to you today. Had my life not like metaphorically, burned down to ash, I would not have the beautiful life that I'm living now. So my lesson to you is this: when things get bad, when they get really, really bad, fear not, because there'll be a lot of growth, a lot of opportunities, and there will be beauty for ashes. So that's it. That's like 23 years of tech sales, plus a little life lessons, kind of distilled into 20 minutes, and 10 life lessons. To recap, the 10 lessons are: number 10, you are more than a label. Number 9, have a strong work ethic. Number 8, don't forget to advocate for yourself. Number 7, you are not an imposter. Number 6, your most valuable resource is your time. Number 5, have some work-life balance. Number 4, create a personal board of directors. Number 3, run your own race. Number 2, perseverance. And number 1, the number 1 lesson on my list is that there will be beauty for ashes. Thank you so much. I hope that some of these lessons will be beneficial to you. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was wonderful. The stuff about the beauty in ashes really resonated with me. I'm sure it did with so many of our listeners as well. The chat was just blowing up kind of like all through your list here. So thank you so much for really creating it and giving us such a great talk. All right, so with that, let's get ready to jump into our panel discussion. I'm going to kick us off with some questions, and then we will open the floor to audience questions, like many of those that y'all have been submitting into the Zoom group chat. So please feel free to keep submitting questions in there if you would like. If we don't get to all of them, you are more than welcome to ask them in the breakout sessions as well. If you do have a question you'd like to ask, just make sure you put it in the chat box so that we can make sure that we get to it, or try to get to it. So Julia, let's start with you. You thrive working in fast-paced environments and wearing multiple hats without losing your focus for each task. What advice do you have for fellow customer-facing professionals who are trying to balance various clients, projects, and now more than ever, your home life on top of everything else while you're at work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm sure that's on top of mind for many on the call here. I would say, give yourself room, right? Be kind to yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Always trying to look for the next best thing. What is the next step? Take a breather regularly. Check in with yourself. And also, even more importantly, now that we're all remote and we can't see each other in person as much, have a chat with others. Maybe not somebody that you would typically work with. Go to somebody in another team. Go to a colleague in another region that you wouldn't typically work with as much, and check in with each other. Maybe you get some inspiration. Maybe you also get you get some coffee. You get a few minutes to relax. And I just saw in the chat earlier, there was a question around how do we work together? So some of the teams, sales and marketing, sales and customer success, marketing, customer success. And I think that's one of the strengths as a company, right? That we don't just stay within the New York team or the Austin team or Dublin or London or what have you, but we really collaborate across different regions, geos, teams. And I think it's important to remember to do that, especially now, because it can be so easy to not just stay within that region, but even within your own living room oftentimes. So take that time for yourself, and take a breather, and most importantly, don't feel guilty about it.
Thank you for calling that out. I feel like it's advice everybody knows, but it can really be helpful to kind of hear it from someone else, especially if you're used to hearing it either from yourself or from kind of the same circle of people, like your own personal board of directors, as Stephanie had called out. Thank you for sharing that with us, Julia. Nati, let's hear from you next. You just joined MongoDB only this past April as the global pandemic was shifting the US workforce and companies were starting to implement the work from home regulations. How did the MongoDB team welcome and support you as a new employee during this time?
That's actually a great question. So when I transitioned in April, there was a bit of concern and apprehension on my end because I wasn't necessarily sure what the onboarding would look like and how that process would essentially allow me to obviously thrive and make sure that I'm meeting my critical targets, right? And so I would say it's on a couple of different scales, right? There's I would say a local scale with my local team and my regional counterparts that I work with on a day-to-day basis. And then also from a corporate perspective as well. So locally, many of our team members actually decided to do more remote happy hours to essentially integrate me into the team, as well as, for me to get an understanding of, the org structure, understand people's personalities and get to know people a lot better. From a corporate perspective, I think that for me, just being able to understand and, be a part of some of the affinity groups and join some of the remote meetings, that in itself, it was definitely helpful for me and supportive for me as a new employee during this time. So I would say, in comparison to maybe some of my peers in other organizations that have joined during the pandemic, in comparison, MongoDB is quite welcoming in that there's different affinity groups, there's local happy hours, remote happy hours, that is, as well as being able to just reach out to somebody from, your IM or Slack just to schedule a one-on-one meeting. So that in itself was very encouraging.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Nati. Vanda, I would love to hear from you next. Let's see here. So you're based in Ireland, as you were kind of talking about a little bit earlier today, and working out of the Dublin office. Can you tell us a little bit about their experience there or about your experience there, I'm sorry, and anything that you'd really like to highlight about kind of how MongoDB works internationally and keeps a global team connected?
Sure thing. So I actually had the, luck to visit and work at the physical office for 2 months before lockdown happened. And I have to say it was a great office, and it was still the old office because MongoDB here in Dublin, we have now a new office that most of us have not been able to visit yet, unfortunately, due to the pandemic. But the old office itself was already amazing. The people are very open. It's super multicultural, very dynamic. And so you get to join so many different office events where you can definitely network and meet different departments all in one building. And of course, you get to build up friendships, among other things. So there's the Dublin office. We have something called the Monthly Value Awards every month. And we used to do this back in the office in person, and now it's over Zoom during our town halls. But we basically show our appreciation by nominating for someone who we think has definitely resonated with us in terms of a certain value or a certain company culture. So for example, build together, or you basically really stand for what you do and you take responsibility. And so you can nominate someone, and then by the end of the town hall, it will be announced, and then the person will be celebrated. So you're really being seen as a human, and not just because, coming from sales, a lot of the times it's really just numbers, but then the Dublin office really doesn't forget that you are human as well, and that there really is more to you than just numbers. And I really, really appreciate that very much about the office. But MongoDB in general has a really interesting dynamic where you will have friends everywhere. You will have a work group everywhere. So We have the SDR, so the Sales Development Representative department globally, and you'll be in connection with everyone in North America, in APAC, in EMEA. And at the same time, because I'm working the German market as an SDR, I also am in really close connections with the entire German team, with the Central European team. And then on top of that, of course, the Dublin office, but then also, like Nati said, the different affinity groups. So for example, we have the Queer Collective going on at MongoDB, where LGBTQIA plus infinity identifying persons and also allies are free to join, where you can basically share knowledge, share experience, and it is a free space for everyone. So it's the goal and the mission is for everyone to be able to feel themselves whenever at the office, or in this case over Zoom. So I really have to say the Dublin office is a multitude of things that I never thought I got to be able to experience. And despite the pandemic of things going on, and because MongoDB is so global, you won't be stuck with just the Dublin office, even though the Dublin office is really great. You will be in contact with everyone in MongoDB internationally. For now, it's only over Zoom, but our bootcamp sessions, so that's our upscaling training sessions when you first join, would have been in New York. And that's then where you would have then met the North American team, for example. So you have loads of opportunities to network with everyone within MongoDB. And I have to say that is really the biggest highlight, that you'll just be so interconnected with everyone and it will feel very homely.
Thank you for sharing that. I know it's very important to really feel like you have those personal connections, especially when everyone is remote. And not having the background of the office to jumpstart that can make it really difficult to form them later. So between the answer we got previously from Nati about onboarding in a pandemic to you talking about what it's like to work globally, I think that's really important to know about MongoDB's culture and how y'all kind of work together in that way. So thank you for sharing that, Vanda. Meghan, let's circle back to you. You were the 8th employee and the first non-technical hire at MongoDB 11 years ago. How have you seen the company grow in the past 11 years? And how did MongoDB help you transition from that senior director of marketing to vice president of sales operations?
Sure. So I'll address the first question first. I mean, as the company's grown, it's really meant an expansion of opportunity for everybody because new teams have formed, new specializations have formed. And that's really what I found we're continuing to do, whether it's opening up a new market or creating a new role or addressing a new business need. So I mentioned Danielle, who runs diversity and inclusion is a really great example of that. But through that all, I really feel like the culture and the core values have remained consistent, which is really good. How did MongoDB help me transition? So, Stephanie mentioned in her talk, which was amazing, by the way, Stephanie, she mentioned imposter syndrome. So when I stepped into that sales ops role, I was definitely suffering from that. Like I mentioned, I had never seen a sales comp plan. I hadn't, done many of the things related to sales ops. And I just had to keep reminding myself, well, they wouldn't have put me in this role if they didn't think I could do it. But it just meant that I spent a lot of time asking questions and trying to understand why things were done the way they were done. And one of the things that I realized is in some ways it's a gift to be new to a role because you have a beginner's or a learner's perspective on things. And you can ask what may be perceived as like the silly questions, but a lot of times they're not that silly. And I find that I still have that experience while being in a meeting. I'm like, why are we doing it this way? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to ask. And everybody says, you know what, that is a good question. Why are we doing it that way? So in terms of help with the transition, I think it was another sort of example of having to figure it out without a whole lot of instruction. But that's kind of one of the things I love about MongoDB is that I do feel like employees have a lot of autonomy to forge their path. So hopefully that helps and answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to know that A, you have that autonomy, and B, that the company supports that, and that, that protocol and that process. So thank you for that. I now have a few questions for the entire panel before we move on to Q&A here. So let's see. And we don't all have to answer this. So if somebody wants to pipe up and answer for the, a couple other people, that's totally fine. But if you do want to respond, please feel free, MongoDB panelists. Especially in the age of COVID-19, how do you maintain a strong work-life integration as opposed to a work-life balance, since we're now not really able to separate the two? And how does MongoDB support you in this?
I can answer that. So this is an interesting question, because I didn't really understand the separation of work and work life. And so for me personally, it was physical, and then it started to be more psychological, right? And so one of the things that I tried to do is, and I don't know if this answers this question, is that, you have some sort of rein on your calendars, right? And one of the things with, remote work is that you have this open calendar, it could be from 7 to 8 or, whatever time zone that you're working. And it's you can easily get overwhelmed, as well as kind of be a little bit more, overburdened as well. And so for me personally, taking reign over my calendar, making sure that I block out time for myself, for breaks, etc. And then also taking time out to just spend time with other colleagues remotely, right? It doesn't really have to be about work in itself. It can just be, hey, how are you doing? Recently on my team, I had a former colleague join the team, and we spend maybe 30 minutes every week just catching up. And it has, nothing to do with, MongoDB as an organization, but it's really just like, we would normally do this by grabbing coffee outside of the workplace. And so this is somewhat a way that I can integrate some of the things that I would do during my life in my work schedule as well. I've noticed, I think there's yoga and some fitness classes that happen during lunch hours or certain hours within the work week. Those types of activities to me are quite valuable, because with remote work, and this is going to be kind of the reality for quite some time now, is that you can easily get overburdened because you don't really have that. A lot of times you don't even have that physical separation, especially in New York, because we have smaller apartments. The physical separation between your office versus the rest of your home, and so you have to make that separation physically and then also even mentally.
Thank you for that. And thank you for kind of diving in, because this can be like a really huge topic. So thank you so much, Nati. Okay, so I have let us run a little bit over schedule here. I'm very sorry, guys, but I have seen that a bunch of the MongoDB team have been jumping in to answer questions in the chat. So that is totally wonderful. If you did not get a response to your question, we are saving them all in the back end. So hopefully we can get you connected with somebody at MongoDB to get answers for those questions later on. But you are always welcome to send them again into hi@powertofly.com. And that way we can make sure we don't lose visibility on any of those. So let's see here. I want to thank the MongoDB team so much for lending us your knowledge. Again, everybody, we have recorded all of these questions as well, so we will do our best to follow up with you if we weren't able to answer them today. And if we didn't get to answer your question, because I know we didn't get to any audience questions, I'm so sorry, everyone. Please feel free to ask it again in the breakout, especially if your question was not answered by one of the MongoDB staff in the chat. So MongoDB, before we close out, here's just a little bit more information about MongoDB and their commitment to diversity. MongoDB is made up of dreamers and doers who share a passion for creativity and pioneering. They couldn't do this without a mix of diverse skills, experiences, and backgrounds. With at least one user in every country, they work as a team, creating an open forum for innovative thought, candid discussion, and respect. To learn more about MongoDB's open roles and benefits, please visit their page on PowerToFly. We've added the URL into the chat, and I'll flag that again here in just a second for everybody. Let's see, there it is. So I'll share that again one more time in the chat. Please visit that page. The one thing I really want to call out for you is if there's no roles posted that would suit you exactly, make sure you follow MongoDB. That's a great way to stay updated when they post new roles, so you don't have to keep checking the job boards again and again. It also lets you know when they participate in events like today, our virtual career fairs, our mini summits, office hours, chat and learns, all of our virtual events. And it also updates you when they make changes. So like if they, update their countries that they're hiring from or have an update posted to the page, that's a really, really great way to find out. Plus it tells the MongoDB team that you're interested in working with them, which is really nice. It kind of functions as like your friend at the company that gives you a heads up when they're hiring. So please feel free to take advantage of that. Last but not least, after you log off today, please take a moment to visit PowerToFly and check out our own virtual events. There's something for everyone, and we do have them daily. You'll kind of get sick of my face because I host a lot of them. You can also watch our entire library of recorded chats right on PowerToFly. Finally, PowerToFly and MongoDB would really appreciate your feedback. So again, please take that. We're going to send you a short 2-minute survey. Please, please, please feel free to take that so that we can continue to present meaningful events for you like this one and really make the changes that make this time well spent for all of you. We're going to pop a link to that survey into the chat here, and it'll also appear in the breakout rooms. So last but not least, we do want to thank all of you for being part of our discussion today. Everyone joining us on today's virtual event will receive a recording of the conversation soon. It usually happens within about a week. We're also going to be, again, sending you a link to that short 2-minute survey. I want to say a huge thank you to our speakers. It can be very scary to get up in front of a virtual room of people. So thank you so much to everybody that joined us from MongoDB. Thank you for your wisdom and your candor. It's really, really lovely to see that from a team. So thank you so much to all of you. We're now going to move into our breakout sessions, which are a great opportunity to more closely connect with our speakers. If you have not yet, I highly, highly encourage you to turn your cameras on to really get the most of that FaceTime with the companies. I mean, I did make an effort today, but normally you'll see me in like a messy bun and like covered in dog fur because that's my entire life. So please don't feel like you can't do this if you're not like Insta perfect right now. More like people really appreciate seeing fresh faces now. So please take that opportunity to really connect with the MongoDB team in that way during your breakout sessions. I also want to make sure that we call out that Ian O'Brien is going to join the sales breakout room. He's the vice president of EMEA and APAC corporate sales. It's a very big deal for him to join us. And thank you so much, Ian, for your time. I did see you answering questions in the chat as well. So if you are joining that sales breakout room, please, please, please take advantage of that because this is a really, really awesome opportunity for y'all. Let's see here. So to get to know the MongoDB team better, we're going to push you into these breakout rooms. We've divided the breakout sessions by skill set. Breakout 1 is the sales one. Breakout 2 is customer success, and breakout 3 is sales ops. Breakout room 3, I believe, is just remaining in this room, so y'all don't have to do anything. But please feel free to pick whichever breakout session fits you best, and then you can hop in between them. If you don't perfectly fit into either of these categories, you can go ahead and choose the breakout session that's closest to your skill set. And I think we're going to be sending the links out on the chat here, so that way everybody has them. If we don't and you already have them, go right ahead. We'll start shifting everybody out now, and that way if we have any questions or problems, we'll still have time in the breakout sessions for everybody to really get into where they need to be and start asking questions. You're going to grab the URL that you see on the screen here, and you're just going to be taken back to the schedule page where you originally used to access this event. From there, you're going to choose the breakout room you want by clicking on the buttons below the main join button you used to originally join. You're then going to leave this Zoom and you'll be brought to a separate Zoom meeting. And by the time that Zoom concludes, y'all will be good to go and you'll leave from there instead of coming back here at the end. Once you join the session, there's going to be a PowerToFly team member there to facilitate. Please take advantage of this FaceTime, guys, especially since I'm launching you there late. I'm so, so sorry. You can also find the link to access the schedule page and the breakout sessions. We're going to load that into the chat here in just a second. I'm going to stick around in this room in case you need additional help. And obviously, this is where the breakout 3, I think, is. So we will see you all in just a few minutes. Please feel free to go ahead and jump. And if you have any problems, I'll be here. So please feel free to flag me directly. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And hopefully you make the most of these breakout sessions.